Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Story Highway, where emotions take the shape of words, and every story flows straight to your heart. Today's story is titled Echoes of the River, a story that begins with silence and ends with peace, carrying us through a journey of loss, healing, and rediscovering what it means to live. It was in the quiet town of Maple Ridge, Oregon, nestled between evergreen forests and the winding Columbia River, that a young boy named Ethan Cole once lived with his parents, Mark and Laura Cole. Theirs was a simple, beautiful life. His father was a fisherman and river guide, strong and kind, known by everyone in the town for his warm laugh and fearless heart. His mother worked at the local diner, always humming softly as she wiped the counters, her eyes often glancing out the window toward the river that defined their lives. The river was more than water. It was their rhythm, their comfort, their way of life. Mark would often take Ethan along on his small wooden boat at dawn, teaching him how to read the current, how to tell when rain was coming by the scent of the wind, and how to trust the silence between the waves. Ethan, with his curious eyes and a sketchbook always in hand, would sit quietly beside his father, trying to capture the dance of light on the water with his pencil. One evening, when the sky turned a deep orange and the world seemed suspended in peace, Mark placed his hand on Ethan's shoulder and said, "Always listen to the river, son." It remembers everything. Ethan didn't know what that meant then, but he would never forget those words. Then came the night that changed everything. The summer storm had rolled in fast, dark clouds, swallowing the sunset, winds tearing through the trees, and thunder shaking the valley. A distress call came from a tourist boat stuck in the middle of the river, and without hesitation, Mark went out to help. The storm raged for hours. Laura held Ethan close by the window, praying for the sound of the boat motor, but the night swallowed every noise except the storm. By morning, rescue teams found the tourist boat capsized near the river bend the passengers saved, but Mark's body never recovered. The river had taken him, and with him, it seemed to take the laughter from their home. Ethan stopped going near the river. His sketchbook gathered dust. He grew quieter, older in his heart. Laura did her best to hold on, working double shifts, smiling when she had no strength left, and telling Ethan stories at night so he would dream instead of remembering. But grief lingers in silence. Every evening, Ethan would sit by the window, watching the current shimmer beneath the moonlight, as if waiting for his father's voice to rise from the water. Years passed. The seasons changed, but Ethan's heart didn't. He grew into a young man, left for Portland to study engineering, and built walls around his memories. He thought if he worked hard enough, the ache would fade. But life has a way of calling us back to what we've left unfinished. One summer, Laura convinced Ethan to come home for a few weeks. Their house looked smaller now, older, its walls whispering stories of laughter long gone. The river flowed, just as it always had, calm, indifferent, eternal. On the first night back, Ethan dreamed of his father standing in a boat, bathed in golden light, smiling but saying nothing. When he woke, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for him. A few days later, while cleaning the attic, Ethan found a rusted metal box wrapped in old fishing net. Inside were his father's river journals, soaked, faded, and smelling faintly of salt. As he flipped through the pages, he saw sketches of river bends, hand-drawn maps, notes about the water flow, and messages written to him, things Mark had never had the chance to say. One note read, "If one day you feel lost, follow the river. It will lead you home." Ethan sat there for hours, his hands trembling, his eyes burning. It was as if the past had finally spoken. The next morning, he made a choice. He would travel down the Columbia River, the same journey his father had made on that final night, and he would listen. He found an old canoe, patched and worn, and set off alone. The morning mist clung to the water as he paddled through the first light. The rhythm of the current steadied his heartbeat, and for the first time in years, he felt his father beside him. The journey became a quiet meditation. He camped along the banks, cooked simple meals over small fires, and read his father's journal entries at night. The farther he traveled, the more he began to understand not just who his father was, but who he himself was meant to be. On his third day, he stopped at a small riverside village where an old fisherman named Henry recognized the name Mark Cole. Henry told Ethan stories about the man who had risked his life countless times to help others, and how he always said that the river was not dangerous, it was alive, and to fear it meant to stop hearing it. "Your father didn't fight the river," Henry said, looking out over the water. "He trusted it. That's why he gave his life for it." Ethan thanked him and left with a lump in his throat. Further downstream, he met a park ranger named Maria, who had been a young intern during the night of the storm. She told him how she remembered seeing Mark's boat lights flicker and disappear into the fog, how they searched for days, but never found him. "Some people said the river took him," she said softly, "but I think it kept him." That night, as Ethan lay in his tent listening to the current, he whispered into the dark, "Dad, if you're still here, show me." On the fifth night, the wind changed. The trees swayed like whispers, and the air grew heavy with the scent of rain. The storm arrived without warning. The sky turned black, the river surged, and lightning split the world apart. Ethan fought to keep the canoe steady, waves crashing against him. Then, through the blinding rain, he saw something, a figure standing on a sandbar, not far away, motionless, watching him. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. It was his father, or maybe just the echo of him standing there under the stormlight. Ethan shouted his name, but the wind swallowed his voice. He paddled desperately toward the figure, but when he reached the spot, the sandbar was empty. Only a single rusted compass lay half buried in the wet sand, engraved with the initials MC. He fell to his knees, the compass trembling in his hand, and sobbed. For the first time since he was a child, he let every tear fall. "I found you, Dad," he whispered, the storm howling around him. He built a small fire that night beneath a makeshift tarp, opened his father's journal, and read the last page. The ink was nearly gone, but one line remained clear. "The river is not where life ends. It's where new stories begin." When the storm passed and the sun rose again, the world looked brand new. The river glistened like liquid glass. The forest steamed with golden light, and Ethan felt something deep within him shift. He continued paddling until the river widened and met the ocean. Standing on the shore, waves touching his feet, he opened his hand and let the compass fall into the sea. The sunlight caught it as it sank, turning it into a fleeting spark before the waves carried it away. "Goodbye, Dad," he said softly, though this time goodbye didn't hurt, it healed. Years later, Ethan Cole became a civil engineer, dedicating his career to restoring rivers and building sustainable bridges across Oregon. He traveled from town to town, helping communities rebuild their connection to the waters they depended on. In every project, he felt his father's guidance in the sound of flowing water, in the shimmer of sunlight on the current, and in the strength he never knew he had. His sketches returned too. On quiet evenings, he would sit by the water and draw not boats or storms, but reflections, memories, and the quiet beauty of life itself. One autumn afternoon, years after his journey, Ethan stood on a new bridge. He had designed one that crossed the same stretch of river where his father had once vanished. The air was cool, the leaves gold and red, the water beneath him alive with ripples of silver. He closed his eyes and listened. The wind carried a sound soft, almost like a voice. "I'm proud of you, son." Ethan smiled, tears welling in his eyes, and whispered back, "I know, Dad." "I'm home, so friends, that was Echoes of the River. A story about pain, love, and the quiet strength that comes when we finally stop running from the things that hurt us and start listening to what they're trying to say. Sometimes healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from remembering differently. The river never took his father. It carried him forward so that Ethan could find his way back. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Story Highway, where every story flows like life itself, deep, timeless, and forever moving forward.